I was baptized in jail, my first twist, and I handled it okay. His rebellion streak shot off the map, and he'd entered ninth grade at Cerritos High School and again hooked up with his old crime partner, Johnny Macias, who had spent only one night in jail for their last caper. After all, Renee was the one who got caught with the stolen guns. Fresh out of the Boys Republic and broke, Boxer picked up a sawed-off shotgun from some homeboys and recruited Johnny to help him with the robbery. Renee recalled, "Anytime I needed money badly, I did a robbery. There was a 6-foot wall surrounding the tract housing complex where the Macias family lived, and 100 yards away was an Arco gas station. The plan was to rob the Arco under the cover of dark at closing time, run the 100 yards, hop the fence, and escape into Johnny's house with the loot." The 15-year-old robbers snuck into the station through an empty mechanic's bay and hid in the back office. They could see the heavy-set woman clerk from collecting the day's cash receipts from a small, round safe in the floor. It was late at night when she turned off the lights, and there was the sound of doors clicking and locking. The juvenile thieves, shotgun ready, waited to jump the woman as she came to the back office. 10 minutes passed and she never showed. Johnny said, "I think we better check." They crawled across the garage floor on their bellies, only to find the clerk and the money gone, all the doors shut tight, and the alarm system activated. The two robbers were locked inside. Quickly, they took all the cigarettes off the shelf, stuffed them into a bag, and slammed through a door equipped with an emergency escape swing bar. The alarm went off. They ran like hell, scaled the wall, and escaped into Johnny's house. Robberies were always risky. Drug dealing was steady, easy money. That was the money, explained Boxer. And girls gravitated towards you. Homeboys gravitated towards you because you had things. And I was a hustler in that respect. This was the 1970s, and Renee was barely a teen as he slipped into a free-spirited stoner phase during which he frequently sold and smoked marijuana, but also dropped acid, LSD, and sold it and any other experimental drug he could get his hands on. With these stoner guys, it was like an all-out 24-hour party, explained Renee. You just got loaded until you couldn't stand it anymore and you dropped. There were trips to the Colorado River where he partied with the screwed biker babes, hippie chicks, and surfer girls. Girls would have sex with you at the drop of a hat. Sometimes he even tried to trade his cholo outfit for a Hawaiian surfer shirt, sandals, and jeans. He went to rock concerts and listened to ZZ Top, Peter Frampton, Ted Nugent, Santana, Heart, Led Zeppelin, and Pink Floyd. He stayed out late at night and got up around mid-morning. Whoever had a party, cholos or stoners, Renee was usually there getting high and selling dope. His father more than once caught him on a high, sat him down in the house, and watched him so he couldn't go out. Again he'd preach, "Those guys you were hanging out with are no good." A couple of times he hit his son with the belt, hoping to enforce some discipline. He would order him not to leave the house, but Renee would sneak out a bedroom window when no one was looking. He was uncontrollable, and his frustrated father didn't know what to do. His mother was just glad when he was home and off the streets. Renee ditched school more and more because he thought it was cool. I thought it was cool to be a goof off. He only liked 2 classes, auto body repair and safety. That was it. It finally got so I attended homeroom in the morning, hooked up with my friends, ditched the rest of the day, and got high in Freedom Park, right across the street from the high school. He eventually dropped out after the 9th grade. His father gave Renee a job at his newly opened custom furniture factory and tried to teach him the skills of a finished carpenter. Good old-fashioned hard work. He moved his son from job to job. There was staining, sealing, lacquering, and working with resins, formica, and wood. Also, there was sweeping floors with minimum wage Mexican workers. Renee hated it. His older brother Mark worked at the factory too, and he felt the same way. Every couple of weeks, they'd get paid, quit, go party, and do drugs until their father dragged them back to work again. At the same time, the Enriquez family took in a few of the local runaways, middle-class white kids who got into trouble with their families and had nowhere else to go. The troublemakers, or rabble, explained Renee, gravitated toward our house. Anglo families seemed to throw their no-account kids out of the house when they turned 18. Mexican families don't do that. Families are sacred to us. My dad at first would give the new house guests the dirty eye, but the softened part of him even gave them jobs at his factory. Meanwhile, the Enriquez family's garage became a serious party spot with all the ingredients for the downfall of a teenager. Cases of beer, acid, sensimilla weed, hash oil, a couch, stereo, strobe light, and willing teenage girls. It was like a love shack, said Renee, and everyone knew if the door was open, there was a party. Homeboys and stoners would come by, and jocks and cheerleaders, surfer chicks, and even nerds. It was a mixture of ethnic and social groups. Neutral turf for everyone who wanted a party, but especially a magnet for bad boys. Even some of the neighborhood good girls found their way into this teenage den of iniquity, and more than one lost their virtue. It was always packed. Renee's father would get angry when he found beer cans on the lawn and when the unbridled revelry kept him awake at night. Besides that, the parents basically didn't interfere because at least their sons were off the streets. The garage scene made Renee a popular teenager with a wide range of contacts. There were drugs to be had, and my interaction with different groups enhanced my effectiveness as a leader. It was during this period that Renee went to score some dope and brought a half spoon of heroin. He took it home. His brother Mark cooked it up and found a syringe left in their bedroom by an older homeboy. They both shot up. It was Renee's first heroin high. I remember getting horribly sick, throwing up, vomiting, becoming violently ill. But after that was euphoric warmth. You sit back and you're in this drug cloud, this euphoria that's so attractive and alluring. He didn't do it again the next day or the next week, but that euphoric feeling was trapped deep inside his mind. He started chipping, doing heroin more and more frequently, and became a serious heroin addict at the age of 16. Renee would chase the dragon for the rest of his life. Pam Jonas was a pretty, blue-eyed, sandy-haired blonde girl, 3 years older than Renee. He first met her when she came to his house with some of her homegirls to buy PCP. She came from a middle-class, dysfunctional family with divorced parents, a high-maintenance mom who liked to drive flashy Cadillacs, and a heavy-drinking father who threw Pam out when she became pregnant. The baby was lost when she miscarried. That was before she met Renee. Pam didn't drink or do drugs, was actually a bit naive, and for some reason was always infatuated with gangsters and our wild lifestyle, said Renee. In truth, she was his opposite, but she was kind of a wannabe. There was never a strong emotional bond between them, but they became an item, a novelty for Renee, and she moved into the Enriquez home. Renee gave his pliant mother an ultimatum. Either I'm moving out or she's moving in. Pam moved into Renee's bedroom and within a few months was pregnant again. They got married when he was only 17. It was normal, Renee observed, for them to live at home with his parents. I love waking up to the smell of my mother's cooking, coffee, chorizo, and tortillas, and hearing the sizzle of eggs and sausages on the grill. He felt kind of proud that he impregnated Pam and wanted to do the honorable thing. I thought it was going to make me a man. It didn't. He cheated on her all the time with her friends. The relationship was doomed from the start, and it didn't set well with Renee's father. He wanted his son to be responsible and develop a work ethic. That wasn't happening either. Renee was quitting his job every other week. That continued to frustrate his father. Also, Renee was coming to the job loaded and selling drugs to other employees. On one occasion, an angry Mr. Enriquez snapped his son's head back with an open hand across the face while at the coffee shop near his office at the furniture plant. Renee remembered that he glared at his father with death in my eyes. There was a large cake knife on the counter where they stood, and John Enriquez slid it toward his boy. Go ahead and do it, tough guy. Not even a knife could cut the tension in that room as the father turned and left. Renee called his new wife to come pick him up at work and once again quit his job. A few weeks later, Renee had been out all night partying and had had only an hour of sleep when his dad came in. It's time to go to work. Let's go. Wake up. Renee resisted. Hell no. Screw your job. His father was seething. Get that whore out of my house. Renee slipped out of bed. Don't ever say that. That's my wife, Dad. The words stung again. Get that whore out of my house. The son, a few inches taller, swung a fist at his father and struck him in the eye. The blow didn't faze the older man. John Enriquez, who had done some boxing in his youth, came back with a quick combination of punches. Boom, boom, a busted lip. Boom, boom, a black eye. Boom, boom, and the rebellious son was on the floor. Rene shouted with angry tears in his eyes, "Fuck you, I hate you. Don't ever raise your hand to me, kid." The disappointed father walked away and went to work. His son stayed home and got high. Later that night, Mr. Enriquez called from the shop in a trembling, tearful, apologetic voice and invited Rene to the company Christmas party. The son said, "I don't want shit from you," and slammed down the phone. The anger lived in both of them. "It drove us deeper, farther apart," said Rene with regret. "But at the time, it felt good. Prior to that fight, my father used to grab me by the back of the neck or the short hairs on my scalp. Sometimes he pinched my ear until cartilage popped. He never laid a hand on me again." At one point, his father gave Rene a self-help classic he embraced, a book called As a Man Thinketh, written in 1904 by James Allen. Basically, it taught that a person's thoughts influence what he achieves. Rene read it and dismissed it as corny. He didn't need books written by some old square to tell him how to live. He was already boxer from Artesia 13. There was constant gang friction. For example, he and a half dozen homeboys were at Grumman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood, where movie stars had their autographs and hand and footprints embedded in the cement out front. Some gang members called Northside Rebels said, "Where you from?" It was their turf. Everyone ended up on the parking lot swinging belt buckles, trading insults, and circling each other. One pulled a knife, but no one was seriously injured. Another time, the Enriquez brothers, Mark, Rene, and John, along with a couple of other Arta homeboys, wandered into a carnival in the nearby town of Buena Park. Rival gangsters there mad dogged them and demanded to know, "Where you from?" This question on the streets is normally perceived as a challenge. So when Rene flicked a cigarette into a gangster's face and bitch slapped him, that sparked a fist fight, free for all, that quickly ended when police showed up with attack dogs and dispersed the gang members without making any arrest. Later that day, the Arta homeboys were talking to some girls at a duplex in Fullerton, another Orange County community, when the same rival, Tokerstown gang members spotted them. The words, "Where you from?" were hanging in the air for barely a second when steely blades started flashing. Rene, who was knifed in the back, fought furiously with the bumper jack to save Mark, who somehow ended up down the street on the sidewalk, stabbed repeatedly. A buck knife and a pocket knife were sticking into Mark's blood-covered stomach when Rene and a few others pulled him into a waiting car to escape. Even 13-year-old John had a slash wound on his leg as Rene dialed an ambulance from a nearby 7-Eleven convenience store. Rene and John were stitched up and released that night. Mark almost died and spent weeks in the hospital recovering from his wounds. Their mother and grandmother put eggs and oil on his stomach and prayed to the saints in Brujeria. The night of the attack, John and Lupe Enriquez rushed to the hospital and spent much of the night crying for their sons. Rene had a vivid recollection that his father didn't get mad. He hugged me with tears in his eyes, knowing we fought to save Mark's life and that I would never abandon my brothers. The police that night arrested Rene and Mark, but the case was later dropped. The Orange County District Attorney's Office determined that the Enriquez brothers had a good argument for self-defense. Still, the gang chaos never ended. Once, while driving their mother's car, they spotted a cholo named Bobby from Hawaiian Gardens, stopped on his motorcycle at a red light and headed to work in the opposite direction. He saw them too, flipped some HG hand signs, gave them the finger and took off. Rene pulled a star-shaped lug wrench out of the trunk and got back in the car. His brother took off on a shortcut through some residential areas to catch up with Bobby at a nearby industrial park where he worked. We pulled up behind him right as he turned off the main boulevard into his job site, remembered Rene, and I leaned out the window with the lug wrench. Mark accelerated like a cop car giving chase. Bobby heard the noise, turned and moved the bike just enough to avoid a full blow. The lug wrench slammed against the motorcycle and glanced into his body, almost knocking him over. Mark stopped the car and ran back into the faltering bike. Bobby took off, the motorcycle crooked and wobbly, but operational enough to make it to the safety of his workplace a few blocks away. The Enriquez brothers began carrying guns for protection, and 4 or 5 more times shot up a house where some rival Hawaiian Gardens gang members lived. They'd sometimes sit in their own front yard or garage waiting with guns because they expected retaliation. Their father hated it. I couldn't get them to understand, he said. That was not the only way I was taught to live. The pattern of violence escalated along with the use of harder drugs, heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamines called crystal at the time, and Rene sank deeper into the gang member abyss. Not even he understood it at the time, but drug addiction and the gang lifestyle, referred to by gang members as La Vida Loca or the crazy life, were narrowing his choices and shaping his life. Prevailing Cholo logic was simple. Why work to support a family when you could go deal drugs or rob to get money? So that's what Rene did. In East Los Angeles, visiting his grandmother, he and a family friend named Hector decided to pick up a quick few bucks. There was a little mom and pop grocery named Steve's Market. Rene walked in and pulled out a knife. "Give me your money." The 70-year-old woman behind the counter pulled out a little children's broom and started beating him over the head with it. She chased him out into the street yelling, "Lárgate, ladrón, ladrón. Get out, thief, thief." Little bumps appeared all over his head and hands as the broom struck him, and the beanie he was wearing was askew. Hector pulled up in the getaway car laughing and said, "Come on, let's go." Rene jumped in the car angrily. "What are you doing? Why didn't you help me?" "What am I gonna do?" answered Hector. "It's an old lady." He stepped on the gas. The two robbers looked at each other and burst into hysterical laughter. It was a bungled job, but most of them weren't.